all of us, have been trying to outrun Mother Nature. But it's pretty clear that Mother Nature has outrun us. The reality is we're living in an era of extremes.
We are living in an era of extremes. That was Governor Gavin Newsom earlier this afternoon, addressing the upcoming stretch of extreme heat. I'm Alex Bell, and this is To the Point. We're taking the time to go in depth into issues that are affecting the lives of Northern Californians. And now two things happened today. First, Governor Newsom declared a state of emergency. He's trying to increase energy production and reduce demands on the state's power grid. We've also been issued a statewide flex alert through tomorrow, which we'll get to in just a second with Monica. But we also want to mention that Sacramento County is also recommending that organizers postpone or cancel outdoor events planned during the day this Saturday all the way through to next Tuesday. There is a lot to prepare for. Chief Meteorologist Monica Woods is here to break everything down. Monica, what do we need to know?
Well, first and foremost is now we have an excessive heat warning that is upgraded from our watch yesterday. Starts up on Saturday, lasts through Tuesday. As we zoom in a little bit closer, you can see all the areas in the valley and even into the foothills affected by this. Some of the peak temperatures, 115 degrees with very little overnight relief. Also towards the coast, we're looking at an excessive heat watch that also starts up on Saturday. Dangerous heat mostly for interior areas with temperatures in the 90s. All under this ridge of high pressure, a classic setup for a stretch of 100s like this, peaking on Labor Day with a high of 112 and dangerous heat. Possible record highs as well. So as Alex was mentioning, a couple of things that we're going to be following: flex alerts, air quality, fire danger, and sporting events. Some of them already postponed or even delayed for the start. First, that air quality. It is a spare the air day for tomorrow, so reducing driving and equipment use will certainly help to keep the air clear, as well as using active transportation like any type of regional transit that we can use. Air quality for tomorrow and healthy for sensitive groups in Sacramento, El Dorado, and Placer counties expected to only get worse, as well as the stress on our power grid. So for tomorrow, you want to make sure that we are doing our voluntary power conservation, turning up the AC to 78 degrees or higher, and postponing larger appliance uses, especially during that peak time from 4 to 9 p.m. Alex.
Now, you're going to be hearing that term flex alert a lot over the next few days. So we looked into who exactly gets to make that call and why flex alerts are used in the first place. Here's what I found out. Flex alert can be used to issue when the group that oversees the electric grid is worried about a high level of usage. For many, that group is CAISO, or the Independent System Operator. CAISO is a balancing authority, and their job is to regulate how power is used between the major utilities and the people they serve. The United States electric grid is broken up into 3 sections. We're in the Western Interconnection, or WEC. Inside WEC, there's 37 balancing authorities. 8 of them operate in California, and CAISO is the largest by far. It covers about 80% of the state's grid and monitors the largest utilities like PG&E. In our area, there's also BANC, which oversees SMUD in Sacramento and MID in Modesto. The point is, when a balancing authority issues a flex alert like they did today, they'll notify customers with a text or email. The flex alert is a strategy to stretch the amount of power on the grid by asking customers to use in a conscious way to avoid more restrictive measures like rolling brownouts. We know a lot of people have a lot of questions, especially when we're seeing this many days of heat. So we went straight to SMUD. We have Lindsay Van Lanningham right now to answer some of the most pressing questions. Lindsay, I think the biggest question on everyone's mind is, are we going to have power? Are we going to see any outages with this much heat?
Yeah, barring some sort of an emergency, we foresee having enough power to get customers through the weekend. So we do not foresee any sort of power outages or rotating outages or anything like that.
So people can expect to have electricity. That's not a concern that they should have right now.
Yeah, barring some sort of a grid emergency, yes.
And what about AC? When's the best time that people should be running their AC at a higher temperature?
Yeah, so if customers are really looking to stay cool but still conserve, we're looking at the 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. time frame. That's when energy use is at its highest, and it's also the most expensive. So we ask customers to turn their AC to about 78 degrees to help save. On top of that, for every 2 degrees that they turn their thermostat up, they can save 5 to 10% on cooling costs.
And a lot of people, like you said, they're just trying to save money and stay cool. What are some other things that they can do or some tools that they can use to do that?
Yeah, little things like, closing your curtains on windows that face the sun, running your ceiling fans, not letting your house heat up to begin with. You can cook cool in the evening times to not heat up your kitchen. But we also have some really cool tools over on smud.org/heatwave. And customers can help compare different appliances in the house in different times of day to see how much it costs so they can really get a handle on their bill.
All right, Lindsay, thank you so much. We appreciate it. The upcoming extreme heat paves the way for a potentially dangerous fire season. When we come back after the break, we're going to look at the new normal that California faces as temperatures rise.
California is the pyro state, right? I mean, it's the fire state. And we get a 3 to 6 month drought every year in California. And it's not a question of if it's going to burn, it's a question of when it's going to burn and under what conditions. And the way that fires are happening now with warming climates is we can't stop them in landscapes like this.
The warming climate gets a lot of attention already, and it is important, but for now, I want you to set it aside, because climate change can't be solved by California alone. Maybe you missed the part that can.
In landscapes like this.
Landscapes. That part of our problem is entirely on the ground inside California. We don't need the rest of the world to solve it. What we do need, according to fire scientists, won't be popular or easy.
You have to understand, and you get it, but politicians don't, and even a lot of agency heads don't get this. The issue is not too much fire. The issue is too little fire.
It's a paradox. To stop burning so badly, we need to let our forests burn more. Welcome to the new normal.
As it said, that's a clip from The New Normal, our award-winning investigation of California's wildfire crisis, which we are going to finish right after the break.
Yeah, and it's as relevant as ever. This late summer heat wave primes our forests to burn, heading into the most dangerous months of fire season.
You can visit this one part of California's mountains where the firefighters talk way differently than you're used to. They say weird things. Things like,
"This was a great place to get a lightning strike."
Russ Mitchell is a firefighter in Yosemite National Park. He took us right into the middle of his wildfire. It's got a name and everything. It's the Indian fire. Russ has a whole crew working on it, and by the standards most of us are used to, they are doing a lousy job.
It's not under control. We have done no suppression activity. And so he's tracking the perimeter right now.
That's just how they roll in Yosemite. They keep a close eye on fires, but try not to interfere with them. This one's 140 acres. Not bad, but they'd love to see it go bigger.
We don't have a lot of fire history in here, so if we get 50 acres, if we get 100 acres, it's a start.
But that's the prize.
Right, it is.
People don't think of acres as a prize, but you
Right.
do.
This fire in Yosemite is the sort of thing you would have seen all over California before settlers ever arrived here. Low-intensity fires like this one would naturally burn out the forest floor, on average every 5-10 years or so. Scientists know that because they've studied the rings of ancient trees. Unlike a megafire, something like 80% or more of the big trees will survive this one, and they'll be healthier for it.
There is good fire out there, and I know that's maybe not the right politically correct term, but you see what it's doing. It's cleaning up the forest.
Our fathers and our grandfathers or our great-grandfathers may have done too good a job suppressing all fire.
Jim Tucker's been with Yosemite since the park made a pretty radical change.
In 1974, every fire was a bad fire and it must be put out immediately.
But in the 70s, Yosemite changed all that, declaring that fire is a part of nature and that it has benefits.
This fire is actually going to provide fire safety in this part of the forest.
To this day, fire scientists are still kind of in awe of what Yosemite did. Here was this big tourist destination that just up and flipped the script. The park managers basically told the whole world, yeah, we get it, you're afraid of fire, and nobody wants to see smoky skies or blackened forests when they come here, but too bad. That's just nature. You came here to see nature, didn't you?
And boy, did they get criticism, and boy, did they get political pressure. And now 40 years, now 50 years almost later, they're coming out the other side smelling so good, it's unbelievable.
Hugh Safford works outside of the park. He's the U.S. Forest Service ecologist for all of California and a leading researcher on how our forests work.
Ferguson fire goes into the park, boot, goes out. Rim fire goes into the park, boot, goes out after a while. Not on our side, because we don't have that going on.
Most of California isn't as fire safe as Yosemite. In the foothills south of Lake Tahoe, you can see the danger that so much of the state faces. The forest floor is overgrown, it's packed with fuel. Because unlike Yosemite, it hasn't burned in a long time. We haven't let it. Hugh points out that 3/4 of this kind of forest in California haven't seen a natural fire in more than a century.
It's like building a bonfire, right? You've waited 100 years and every year you're adding more and more sticks to that thing, and now it's a big pile, and when you burn it, it's going to put out a lot of flames.
That's what powers our megafires, which don't just threaten people, they're killing some of our forests forever. Unlike some evergreen trees, ours have seeds that sit in open cones. And some of these fires burn so intensely, they destroy every pine seed for miles. Firefighters can reduce the danger of that kind of intense fire using prescribed burns to clean out the forest. But it's too risky for that here. There are homes just down the road. So, the foresters use other methods. Cutting. Sometimes firefighters will do this work, but this particular crew is made up of loggers. They've got a special deal with the Forest Service called a stewardship contract. That's basically just a trade. The loggers are doing cleanup work to make the forest safer from fire. In exchange, they're allowed to take some of the medium-sized trees for lumber. Logging is controversial. Environmentalists still remember the industry's destructive past.
You know, I'm very much an environmentalist, but at the same time, we have to get away from just sort of the tree hugging mentality. You have to look at the whole, it's the classic, not seeing the forest for the trees.
But this isn't the logging from the old clear-cutting days. It looks like this when they get done. The biggest trees stay standing in the forest, one that's a lot easier to see through. And most importantly, in this part of the forest, a fire would act a lot more like the calm fires we see in Yosemite. There's just not enough fuel anymore for a megafire. But this project is just a sliver, protecting only a few hundred feet either side of a highway.
So that's the question, I think, for agencies, for society, is how do you sort of scale out to something that can actually have an effect that you could see from space, for example?
Fire managers are pushing to thin or burn 500,000 acres of California forest each year because the research shows that's how much used to burn naturally. That's an area bigger than the city limits of LA, San Jose, and Sacramento combined every year. The experts say we can't get there through one method. You'll need a combination of cutting and burning.
Back of the envelope calculation, we need to do 5 to 10 times more per year to really get a handle on this, and we could do it ecologically.
Professor Scott Stevens leads the fire science program at Cal Berkeley. He says if we don't act to shape our forests for the future, big fires and bark beetles are going to do it for us. He thinks we can scale up cutting in a hurry, but burning, that could take a while.
I think it takes maybe half a generation to really get to a point where you start prescribe fire in earnest and actually have the ability to do it successfully over and over again.
That's partly a logistical problem, but mostly a cultural problem. When you allow a forest to burn, most people don't focus on the fact that it's doing something good.
What's the toughest part of trying to sell people on that idea?
The politics of smoke. Nobody likes smoke.
Taro Pusina used to work in Yosemite. He's now taking that model to the Inyo National Forest, where he's the fire officer. The Inyo mapped out a new plan. They've got these zones in red where they want to attack fires right away to protect neighborhoods, and these other zones in green that make up more than half of the Inyo, where they want to try to allow more fires to burn the way they do in Yosemite. More forests in California are looking at this kind of strategy, arguing it's better to let the fires burn when they're less intense.
People who think they can live there without being impacted by wildfire and smoke maybe really should take a bigger look at the environment that they're in.
It's worth pointing out, smoke is not merely annoying. Air pollution can kill people Air quality experts say it'd be better to do all this by cutting without fire, but they agree the smoke from a controlled burn or a ground fire in the forest is a lot less harmful than a mega fire burning through treetops.
About the same as a pretty bad day in Beijing, and that we never want to have that here, because that is, people are just dying from that.
Smoke is just one of the big obstacles if we want to scale up this statewide landscaping job, and the results won't come quickly. Even if we started doing everything the fire scientists suggest, they say we'll keep seeing worse fires for the next couple decades. But the warming climate means we don't have a lot of decades to wait as California gets closer to the temperatures of Arizona.
I know you guys get it, but you have to understand that most people in California do not understand that we are witnessing the beginnings of extinction of forest in a lot of California. I'm not making that up. It's not hyperbole. It's simply happening. It's going to start in Southern California. We are going to burn those forests up, and then we're going to work our way from the Southern Sierra North.
People created this new normal of mega fires. People also have the tools to start to change it. But the forests are ready to burn now. Mother Nature, it seems, is all out of patience.
And that, of course, was Brandon Ritteman reporting. Brandon, that bit towards the end, though, when he says forests going extinct, was he serious about that?
Yeah, that part really sticks with me. That's Hugh Safford. He's no longer with the Forest Service, recently retired, but he told me you really don't have to stretch your imagination to picture this. That comparison to Arizona, Phoenix, is really apt. We're having that kind of weather right now. They don't have big stands of trees there, but we do. The kind of weather we're going to experience this week really kiln dries the forests that are remaining and prime them to burn in the way we just described.
And you say that the one big takeaway is that we shouldn't debate between forest mitigation or climate change is the problem.
No, not between those two things. Politicians will very often try to focus on one or the other, but we really need to demand better than that because these are both very real problems. The landscape problem is that bonfire piling up. The climate gives us more days with conditions that will let all that stuff burn. And then, of course, we have a third problem with fire, sparks.
And that's why you look so closely to PG&E.
Yeah, exactly. Something like 10% of our fires come from power lines here in California. Those are preventable. And if power lines aren't properly maintained, they are vulnerable to wind damage, wind being one of the worst things for fire. We have seen this turn deadly time and time again. We need more sparks in this state like a hole in the head.
All right, Brandon, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And speaking of that Phoenix-like weather, it is here. Let's take a look at our Gilmore backyard right now. It's no surprise, it's hot. That's the news of the day. So Sacramento seeing 96 right now, Modesto at 94, Tahoe 81. But let's get straight to that 10-day forecast. This is really important. Take a look as we get closer to Thursday, 104, Friday at 103. And then you see the holiday weekend, 112. We'll be right back after this. The heat is going to be brutal this weekend, but lucky for you, we've got a cheap way that you can stay cool and also entertained. So this Saturday is National Cinema Day. Theaters like Regal, Cinemark, and Studio Movie Girl are charging just $3 for every movie. I already got my tickets, and you might want to get yours because they are selling out fast. I'm not joking about that. We have everything that you need to know at abc10.com/to-the-point. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us. I am no stranger to California, but I am new to Sacramento, and I want to hear what's going on in your world. There are a million ways to reach me. A lot of you already have. We have Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or just simply email tothepoint@abc10.com. I also want to say make sure that you take care of yourself, your families, and your loved ones. This heat is no joke. Have a great night.